Who's the black private dick that's a sex machine to all the chicks? You damn right. Who is the man that would risk his neck for his brother, man? Can you dig it?
Good evening, good evening. Welcome to the Radical Republicans live show. And I am the Chief, your host, Jarome Bell. Thanks for tuning in with me again on this Sunday night, July the 12th, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, bringing you the truth, uncensored, unedited, unfiltered, unscripted, and definitely unapologetic, like we always do. I hope y'all had a very, very good week. And thank you for tuning in once again. Once again, we're going to wait for the house to fill up. Again, we're on Rumble. We're on YouTube. We're on X. We're on Facebook. Still can't get that Getter hook up, so we're not on Getter. So we're just live here on my channel, Jarome Bell, and on the Freedom First Network. And the show will also be seen on Pickaxe and Subscribe Star after the show. And if I'm lucky, it'll be back on Apple Podcast again after the producers at FFN get a hold of it. So thank you again. Hopefully the sound is good. Hello, Susan, Joe, Carolyn, and the rest. Appreciate you. Got calls today. Are you on today? Are you going to be on today? Yes, I am on today. So get in here. You know who you are. You know who you are. But like I say, good evening. I am Chief Jarome Bell, 27 years, United States Navy. And I need you to hear what I'm about to say as a sailor. First, and a broadcaster or podcaster second. And as you know, we are back at war again. Tuesday night, CENTCOM and President Trump, I won't say CENTCOM, but President Trump, while he was over in Turkey, they hit over 80 targets inside Iran. I think it's up over 180 now. You know, they hit the air defenses, coastal radar, anti-ship missiles, 70 or 80 plus Revolutionary Guard boats or something like that. And that's not a message. That's actually a campaign. Trump said he was going to hit them hard, and he did. We did, and the Revolutionary Guard says it answered, and which they did on American installations once again in Bahrain and Kuwait, and sirens over those two Gulf states and the crosshairs again. Our people that are stationed there, if any, we don't have many stationed there, and I tell you that. We have a what we call a skeleton crew trying to build stuff back, put stuff back together, but it's not happening because we just took it out again. Now, here's what the White House will tell you, and I'll give it to you straight because that's the standard on this show. CENTCOM says Iran fired on 3 tankers in the Strait of Hormuz on Tuesday, a Qatari LGN carrier, a Saudi tanker, a Liberian flagged vessel. That's confirmed by maritime security agencies, not just the White House or CENTCOM. Iran's shooting at merchant sailors is a crime. However, I would never soft pedal it because we have an MOU. We have an MOU, and I believe that we are telling those ships to violate the MOU and that we will protect them. We are probably insuring those ships undercover because the Lords of London has stopped. Well, let's say they jacked their prices up over 10 times the amount. And these are the same tankers that I escorted, me and my battle group. I guess when I say me, I was on the USS Carl Vinson. I told you guys this story before in 87, 88. Ernest Will, same straight, the same straight. So I know what those crews are feeling tonight. I'm talking about the tankers because we don't have any ships in the strait. We can't do that anymore. But don't let anybody sell you a story that this war restarted on Tuesday because it didn't. Tuesday was the 3rd night of the American strike since the MOU was signed on June 17th. There was a round around, June 27th. The bombs never really stopped. The very same day as Tuesday's strikes, the Treasury Department tore up the oil sanctions waiver for Iran, the waiver that was the deal. The blockade lifted, the strait reopened, sanctions paused for 60 days. That was the trade. That was the whole architecture of the MOU. See, and I have it. I have the MOU right here. I read it last week, but for those of you who may have missed the show or joining in for the first time, paragraph 5. Paragraph 5. So read it with me. Here it is. Upon the signing of this MOU, the Islamic Republic of Iran will make arrangements using its best efforts for safe passage of commercial vehicles with no charge for 60 days from the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman and vice versa. The traffic of commercial vessels will immediately start, and considering the need for removing the technical and military obstacles and demining by the Islamic Republic of Iran will be instated within 30 days. The Islamic Republic of Iran will conduct dialogue with the Sultan of Oman to define the future administration and maritime services in the Strait of Hormuz in discussion with other Persian littoral states in line with the applicable international law and the sovereign rights of coastal states of the Strait of Hormuz. That's paragraph 5. No threats, no hostile acts while the framework holds, supposedly. Both sides signed it. President Trump signed it. And I'm telling you tonight, as the document reads, well, pretty much both sides shredded it too. However, I'm going to say this. Iran shot at the tankers because they could in the MOU. And this administration was dropping ordnance, and it's also in here too that says that um, um, that there should be no threats as well. I'm going to find that in a minute. That there should be no threats, and Trump threatens them all the time, right? I'll find it during the show here in a little bit. One of them is pending number 9, pending the final deal. The United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran agreed to maintain the status quo. The Islamic Republic of Iran will maintain the current status quo of its nuclear program, and the United States of America will not impose any new sanctions and will not deploy additional forces in the region. The United States of America undertakes that immediately upon the signing of this MOU and until the termination of sanctions, the U.S. Department of Treasury will issue waivers that they just took back. All right. So, this is basically over. This MOU might as well, we can just throw this in the trash. Just throw it in the trash. The president stood at the NATO summit in Turkey in Ankara and said the MOU is over. The talks are over. It's a waste of time. And it's a waste of time. This is his own deal, though. This is his own deal. 19 days old, his words. An unconditional surrender. He called it in June. You don't bomb a country you already beat, folks. Right? He said, we've already won. You don't bomb a country you've already beaten. We've already won. You don't hit 180 targets in a country that you've already beaten. And that part should bother every American, either whether you're sitting on the left or sitting on the right. I don't really care where you all sit because I'm not on the left or the right. I'm in the middle. I'm a constitutional independent. But the bottom line is Congress never authorized this war still. And I'm still maintaining that. And I'm probably the only host of any podcast that's going to tell you that's telling you that, because Article 1, Section 8, the power to declare war belongs to the people's representatives. And that's it. Not to one man, not to any man. And on June 3rd, and this really didn't get a lot of press, not at all, but the House said so, 215 to 208. On June 23rd, the Senate also said so, 50 to 48. Now, how is that going to, with Mitch McConnell being laid up in the hospital, I'm not going to say he's brain dead like Laura Loomer because I don't know for sure. What I do know is that he can't perform his Senate duties right now because he's in the hospital. And then last night we had a member die yesterday. So that takes it down to 48-48 right now. And then we have Rand Paul, Collins, Murkowski, Cassidy. So for the first time in history, War Powers Act that both chambers ordered the president to bring the forces home. Both chambers. You know what happened? President Trump ignored them. Pete Hegseth ignored them. This is Congress that said you're done. You're done in the region. Bring everybody home. What's happening? That's the answer from the White House. A shrug. Nothing. 3 inspector generals are now legally required to review this war because it blew past the 60-day limit without a single vote of authorization. Is anybody going to do their job in DC? Is anybody going to stick to their oath? Do we have anybody that wants to perform their duties and not just sit on their ass and collect a paycheck? I mean, I took an oath to the Constitution, not to a party, not to a president. And I've said it on this show about Democrat wars, and I'll say the same about this one. Unauthorized war is an unconstitutional war. And I don't care whose name is on it. It can be Trump. People, oh, you don't love America. Yeah, I do. I do love America. Everything about it. I fought for it for 27 years. But I know we don't have a king. I know we don't have an emperor. I know we don't have a dictator. At least I don't think so. I mean, so we're at what, 135 days of epic fury? The Pentagon says 29 billion. My calculations and other people, outside of the Pentagon, says it's over 113 billion dollars into this war. We have 15 American families with a folded flag for their loved ones. Well, and they say 13, but let me tell you something about that number too. And I keep saying this because even the administration can't keep it straight anymore. CENTCOM says 13 killed in action, 13. Then in their own written statement, they admit a 14th. A service member who died of a medical emergency in that war zone. And then there's a 15th, Major Softly Davies, a National Guard who died on duty at Camp Buehring in Kuwait. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff stood at a podium and honored Major Davies as one of the fallen, number 15. Honored him by name. And that man's name is still not on the official casualty list. 13, 14, and 15, they can't really tell you. And everything else is classified. The real numbers are classified. For the first time in the history of the 250 years of the United States, we have classified KIA, deaths, damage assessment from our government. I mean, when a government can't agree with itself on, how many sons or daughters, because there were ladies as well, mothers, fathers, that came home in a box, that's not a paperwork error. This is a war that they're trying to keep off the books, ladies and gentlemen. This is what this is. So what did we buy with this war? What did we buy? I'm going to show you the bill and a little bit of what we bought. But before I show you the bill, two things happened this week, like I mentioned, inside that Capitol Hill building. And I'm not going to skip them. I'm not going to gaslight you. I'm not going to say and pretend that it didn't happen. I'm not going to pretend that Mitch McConnell is laid up in a hospital bed. Most likely, some say brain dead. Some say, oh, he's still alive. I saw, I think they said Mitch McConnell's team released a photo of him sitting up in the bed. And guess who was sitting next to him? His wife was sitting next to him. Well, that's pretty hard to do from China. It's pretty hard to do from China. And Beijing Mitch sitting up in the bed looking all spry. I'm like, come on, guys, stop. Let's just stop lying. Let's stop gaslighting the American people. If he can't do his job, then there needs to be a special election. This is why they're doing it. They're going to wait till after August 3rd to, when they can't have a special election because they're scared that someone else, like Thomas Massey, is going to run and get that Senate seat. But other than Beijing Mitch, maybe or maybe not, sitting up, weekend at Bernie style, last night, Senator Lindsey Graham died of South Carolina after returning from Ukraine. He was in Ukraine, so there's a lot of speculation about what happened. People are, they're conspiracy theorists, right? They're, like myself, right? I'm a conspiracy theorist. I just happen to be undefeated, so I don't know what that makes me, a theorist or just a factist. But after returning from Ukraine, there was supposedly a call, emergency call, 911 call about a cardiac arrest at his home in DC. 71 years old. They called it a brief sudden illness. Now, this is what his team said. A brief sudden illness. Yeah, very sudden. Did they want to say sudden death instead of illness? Because an illness means that you're sick suddenly, right? Sudden illness, you become sick, but you don't die. But it was a sudden illness, they called it. They called the paramedics to his home, like I said, for a cardiac arrest. So that's sort of two different things, right? Sudden illness, I guess he's sick, cardiac arrest. And it's coming out now by the medical examiner that basically he had clogged arteries. He had the widowmaker or something like that. His aorta exploded, but by his own admission, he had taken the jab. And I'm not saying that the jab caused it, because they say that his father died of a heart attack at 69 years old, 2 years younger than Lindsey, so right around the same time. They say he had some heart disease, some, clogged artery stuff going on. But we also know that clot shot, right? He took the clot shot. We know that. So I'm really waiting, and I doubt if they really tell the truth, even if they do an autopsy, which they should, if they're going to tell the truth, if they found clots in his arteries, because that would be pretty damning. So people are saying it's Iran, it's Russia, it's Putin. No, I think more like it's Anthony Fauci that killed him. That's what I would say. I think that would be the best guess. He spent 23 years in the Senate, and he was set for an interview. He had just won his primary. And I got to move on a little bit because I have a guest coming in at 8:30. And we'll get back to this, but he was scheduled for an interview this very morning, probably on Fox News, but instead his family, unfortunately, is planning a funeral. And now, I did not agree with Lindsey Graham on this war and on a bunch of stuff. I honestly didn't even like the guy. I'm just going to be honest, right? Because, I don't sugarcoat. The man never met a war or deployment of other people's kids that he didn't like. He didn't bow down from any coup attempts and regime changes like what happened in Ukraine and wanted to do in Iran and Venezuela. And everything. I just spent 20 minutes laying out to you the unauthorized bombing of this, the shredding of the MOU of this war. Lindsey Graham would have cheered it. He was cheering every bit of it. He wanted us to basically nuke Iran. He wanted us to just go and finish it, as he would say. But he earned the fight. So I'm just going to say this: God rest him, or wherever he is, and God comfort his people, his family, his sister. I think that's all he has left. So we can bury a man with respect, and we will on this show, and still tell the truth about his politics. And this show does both. All right, so Mitch McConnell's 84 years old. He He has not cast a vote since June 11th, by the way. He's been in the hospital since the middle of June, almost a month now. And his office really won't even tell the American people why not. Not a diagnosis, not a word, except they sent a photo with him sitting up in bed today with his wife, who's supposed to be in China. All right, so I want you to hold these two things together for a second. On one side of the aisle, an anti war resolution passes both chambers, telling the president to bring our forces home. And on the Republican side, one of the most powerful men in that chamber for 20 years, missing in action. And four Republicans had to cross the aisle to get that resolution through because the leadership couldn't hold the line. A leadership vacuum is what we have there. But that's what an unauthorized war gets waged into. An empty chair and a lockdown hospital room. hospital room. So I'm not going to repeat the garbage really flying around the internet about his condition. Really. I don't know his condition. I said I don't. I said there was rumors a little bit. So, but neither do people posting it. So what I know is this, though: the Senate is supposed to be the check, Article 1 of the Constitution. And this week, the check was a ghost. And simply, that's the story. That's not a rumor. A vacancy of duty at the exact moment the Constitution needed that body awake. So I'm going to come back to the bill because I don't want to blow past my guest and getting him in. I want to check and make sure he's actually in the house. And yeah, he is there. And so, I'm going to take a quick break. And I'm going to come back with Colonel Drew Miller, Dr. Drew Miller. And we're going to talk about Hormuz and foreign policy is a centerpiece of this. So we'll get back with you. Colonel, I hope you heard my open, so we'll be back in a moment. We're going to 80 targets Tuesday, 90 more on Thursday, drones on all 3 Gulf states. And we're going to square it with this book when we get back. All right, so we'll be right back on the show in a moment. All right, back on the show. Dr. Miller, go ahead and turn your camera on, or are you just going to come on? Are you just going to come on audio? Can you hear me, Dr. Miller? Hello, Dr. Miller. Oh, wait a minute. Let me add it. I got, yeah, I saw you for a second there. Had to bring you to the stage here. Let's see something. Yeah, you just have to go ahead and pop your camera on if you can.
I'm trying to enable it and nothing happens.
Okay, I tell you what, go out and come back in, and and let's see. Sometimes you have to do it twice. It's just weird like that sometimes.
Okay.
So go out and then come back in. So I just kicked Dr. Miller. So until he comes back, when he gets ready to come back, I'll just read this in. And but hey, Jackie, I see you over there. Ginger Berg, hello. Grinder's gonna be off the hook for Mrs. Lindsay. For Mrs. Lindsay's funeral. I hear you. I hear you. All right, so we'll wait for Doctor to come back in. Hello, Parent Team 6. And Tatus is in the house. Who else is in here? Let me Dr. Miller, let me pop out. Okay, try to do your mic and camera again, Doctor.
Okay. Microphone works. Camera won't come on.
Oh, weird.
Let me try my other camera then. It's just not letting me pick any camera.
You're the first, Doctor. You're the first, man.
That's aggravating. Well, we can start talking. I'll keep messing with it.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. You keep messing with it. So I'll say this. So 27 years I wore the uniform. My guest actually wore it too. And then some. Air Force Academy honor grad, Harvard PhD in public policy. And get this, his dissertation on the underground nuclear shelters for NATO troops is what his dissertation was on. Retired Air Force Colonel, intelligence officer, senior executive service at the Pentagon, research staff at the Institute for Defense Analysis. And then he walked away from the building and walked away from it all and founded Fortitude Ranch, the largest survival community network in this country. His new book called Preparing to Survive in the Age of Collapse. And his argument is simple and it is brutal. The government you pay for has a bunker for itself and a website for you, Colonel Drew Miller. Colonel, welcome to the Radical Republicans Live show. And I see you now. There it is.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Bell. It's an honor to be on your program.
Hey, thank you very much for coming. It's an honor to have you. Very, very honorable. So, did I get that right? Did I get the introduction pretty much right for you?
Yes, sir, you did.
All right. Well, good. So, first thing I'll ask is, um, define for my audience what is the collapse you're talking about, and how it's different from, I guess, a disaster or recession in your
Correct.
book.
So there's two key things that make it what we call a collapse. Number one is the economy's not functioning, and largely that's going to be because people aren't going to work. We are going to have an H5N1 pandemic. It might be 50% lethal. No one's going to go to work. So utilities will stop working. There won't be food and grocery store. And that leads to the second part of a collapse, which is law and order breaks down. People, when they realize that, hey, there's not going to be any food, if the grid goes down or the workers aren't coming to man utilities, municipal water system shut down, you won't be able to survive, not just in big cities, but in suburbs. It won't be livable. So people are going to have to go out and find another place for food and water. And unfortunately, perhaps most people, rather than risk dying, will go out to at least loot and steal food, but potentially kill to survive. And that's what the collapse is. Economy's not functioning, law and order breaks down and is down for a long period of time.
All right. So, in your book, it says that, I guess, definition is for most economic activity stops, which you just stated. Law and order goes. Fatalities above 10% of the population for a
Yep.
prolonged period. You think that's going to happen? 10%?
I think it's highly likely. I believe we're entering the age of collapse. As I said, an H5N1 pandemic, the experts are saying it's inevitable. It's not just biologists. A former director for the Center for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, has said that we are going to have an H5N1 pandemic. The only question is it a natural mutation, or is it deliberately bioengineered by bad people, countries like Iran, North Korea, an Al Qaeda group, or even an environmentalist concerned that there's too many people destroying the planet? He
or
believes it'll
or
probably be
or
a
or,
bioengineered planet.
or Dr. Fauci, with the
Correct.
NH1, and because I mean, this is what we experienced with COVID. Wasn't a foreign country like we're finding out. It was our own people,
Yeah.
and I mean, right?
My book has a chapter called that's 30 examples of how
Mhm.
government is working to kill us now. And the number one thing I mentioned is the thing you just mentioned: funding gain of function research to make viruses more deadly, more lethal, more transmissible. And then the number two thing I write about is giving money to China to help them develop deadly new viruses. We did both of those. Our government did both of those criminal things.
Yeah. So your probability of collapse model says, if I remember correctly, in the book, 16 to 57% annual chance. So to me, that's a pretty wide spread. So walk me through that.
Sure.
23 intelligence officers, scientists, 50 trigger events. What's driving that number up?
Well, there's over 50 things. Some of them we have data on. Like, for example, we know the rough probability based on past events that there'll be a super volcano explosion that blocks the atmosphere for years, crop failures around the world, and, billions starve to death, and other billions die from the collapse and the marauding that occurs. So we've got data for that, but for the most of the trigger events, there is no data. So we ask our experts to give a range. What do you think is the low to the high end likelihood of an event occurring? And then the second part of that is, first of all, does the disaster trigger event occur? And then secondly, is it severe enough to develop into a collapse? Because we can have a lot of disasters that don't develop into a collapse. And so there's things like bioengineered pandemics, attacks on our electric grid, natural disasters like solar flares that take down our electric grid, a lot of other things, artificial intelligence, the leading AI safety experts, the godfather of AGI, of artificial intelligence, Geoffrey Hinton, they're all telling us that it's highly likely that artificial intelligence is going to turn on us. It's going to become rogue. But even if that doesn't happen, I guarantee you with 100% probability, is being used by bad people now to develop new weapons of mass destruction. It's a given. No one in their right mind who understands North Korea would think that they're not using AI to develop a deadly new virus or some other new technology or a new way to enrich uranium that's easier than using centrifuges and technology we used back in World War II. So when you add all these things up, it's highly uncertain. That's why the range is 16 to 57% annually. But the key thing, Chief Bell, is it is not low. It's even the low estimate, a 16% probability of a collapse is very, very bad. And those numbers are going up because of artificial intelligence. And then other new technologies, nanotechnology is another example of a new technology that a lot of experts are saying we're not going to be able to control this, or bad people could misuse it. And a self-replicating virus, a self-replicating bacteria, some disease that kills plants could start spreading around the world, and we just can't stop it. So new technologies are basically the biggest threat we face. There are other trends that are bad, but that is by far the worst one that leads to what I call the age of collapse. We're going to have repeated collapse disasters, I think, in some years. One disaster will hit, a few months later, some other disaster hit. And then we also have, the old reliable, China invades Taiwan and does a nuclear exchange with the US, takes down our electric grid. We get into World War with Russia over Ukraine and expanding into Europe. We get into war in the Middle East with Iran. There's a lot of traditional ways to do it, but it's the new technologies, the new ways of making weapons of mass destruction that enable individuals, not just nation states, not just terrorist groups, but individuals today can use new technologies to develop weapons of mass destruction. And especially with AI, they're super empowered.
Well, with AI too, I mean, we saw, what happened. I think they've been testing AI, and I think we made a big mistake with the autonomy, giving AI, autonomous weapons and going after people. I believe that's what happened maybe in Iran when we blew up the school over there. But what which end are you on? Are you on the 16% end or are you on the 57% end?
I don't know. Either one bothers the hell out of me. That's why I run a Fortitude Ranch survival community. I'm surprised we've gone this far, to tell you the truth, that we haven't had a collapse already. And I credit our intelligence agencies around the world for that, because we are out there looking for people trying to develop the new viruses. And I used to be an intelligence officer, so when I say I think we're doing a good job. If we find a success, as you well know from your experience in the military, we don't put it in the newspapers. Hey, we discovered this person trying to develop an H5N1 virus, and we shut them down. You don't put that in the newspapers, because now word gets out, and how did you find this person? People know. So I think our intelligence agencies around the world are trying to find people doing this, but you can't be perfect forever. And to me, the word is inevitable. There is going to be a bioengineered pandemic. I had an article published on that in the American Interest several years ago. The Johns Hopkins experts, top biologists, former CDC director, they're all shouting, screaming, we're going to have an H5N1 pandemic, and it's going to be potentially the worst disaster humanity has ever faced. Now go to the CDC website, and what do you see? What do they say about the H5N1 threat? Low risk, nothing to worry about. Just trust your government, and they'll take care of you. The title of Dr. Redfield's book, that former CDC director, he titled his book, "What I Know But Could Not Tell You," because while he was in the CDC, he was not allowed to be honest. He was not allowed to warn people about the
Right.
threats. It's only after he left that he was allowed to. So our government is just irresponsible, is too kind a word for it. We're both military. We fought to defend our country, took a vow to protect the Constitution, but our government doesn't obey the Constitution. Neither party does. And our government is building shelters for themselves. They have Mount Weather, Raven Rock, hundreds of facilities. The IRS, Chief, the IRS has better protection than you're offered. They have stockpiled food for themselves. There's nothing stockpiled for citizens. And it's worse than that, because government executive orders authorize government agencies to seize food, water, any resource they want from the civilian population in a collapse, because their number one priority is not protecting us. It's keeping themselves alive and in power. Continuity of government is the formal term, but what it really means is we'll do anything we have to do, including sacrificing citizens' lives, to keep ourselves in power.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it's the continuity of government versus the citizen for sure. So you lean hard on the 2001 Dark Winter exercise. I
Mhm.
read too, and when Sam Nunn played the president. So what did that tell my audience what that exercise admitted that no government official would probably ever say out loud?
Correct. So I've done, I was just county commissioner, and we do training exercises all the time, especially in the military. But generally in our exercises, we win. Well, in Dark Winter, they started a release of a virus. And in the exercise, after a couple days, it was clear that the virus was spreading. There was nothing the government could do to help people. They told them any disaster, government's going to tell you stay home, because there's nothing else they can or will do for you. It was clear that after 3 days, people weren't just going to stay home. They were going to start doing violent things. And they basically shut down the exercise. And then Senator Nunn and some other people, and Senator Nunn, I think, was about to retire at the time, so he was a little bit more frank. They basically got reports issued saying this exercise showed us that we're not prepared for a pandemic. We won't be able to keep people alive and protected, and law and order is going to break down. People aren't just going to sit at home and quietly, respectfully starve to death, or more likely die from no water, no municipal water systems. So that exercise had some reports that got out that was uncommonly honest about how unprepared we are. And that was decades ago. The vast majority of exercises, you will never read anything like the honest assessment we got from Dark Winter. And that's why I talk about it in my book, because it's one of the rare times when we had some honesty from government about the collapse. And the worst example is the EMP Commission, electromagnetic pulse. Congress funded one congressman, Bartlett from Maryland, I believe. no longer in Congress. He got this congressional study, the top experts in the field, utility experts, weapons experts, former CIA directors involved in the study, all the top experts. They made their study, issued the report, and they said our electric grid is horribly vulnerable. Even North Korea, with their small, inaccurate nuclear force, could destroy the US electric grid. And they said, when that happens, we need to be expecting that it'll take us over a year at best to repair the grid. And in that time, 90% of the US population could die. 90%. So that's what their report is. They issued it back to Congress. And what do you think Congress did?
They probably buried it.
They did nothing. Absolutely nothing. That was decades ago.
Mm.
So Congress does nothing about it. Why don't they do anything? Well, there's two reasons they don't do anything about hardening the electric grid. Number one, they get a lot of campaign donations from utilities and utility lobbyists who don't want to
Correct.
harden the grid. The second reason is it is going to cost money to harden the grid. Now, compared to the benefit of saving 9% of the population, spending $10 billion or more, but roughly think about $10 billion to harden the grid is the best expenditure of public funds you'd ever find. But still, if you do that, electric rates go up. And what happens to an elected official running for election if his opponent says, Senator X caused your electric bills to go up $200 last year? They're afraid of losing votes from forcing the
Right.
grid to be hardened. The priority of these career politicians is always reelection,
Reelection.
not doing the right job in terms of obeying the Constitution, not doing the right job in terms of protecting people from threats we can't handle on our own. Their priority is always election. That's why lobbyists, campaign donations, and priority on reelection always decides what a majority of the career politicians vote for. And unfortunately, when you look at Congress, it's career politicians. I can't tell you the figure off the top of my head, but at any one time, I'd guess 80% of them are on their second or third or 10th term.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And and I ran for Congress twice, and I was running on term limits because I believe we need term limits. And some people argue,
You're
well,
absolutely right.
what term limits are the voting? Is the votes? Well, when the votes are rigged, when the votes are stolen, when the elections are not secure, we can't say that the voting is the term limits. We can just vote them out because that doesn't happen anymore. And as we see, there's a lot of foreign money and foreign money and lobbyists that buy elections. Like the one in Kentucky with Massey, they bought that election along with with help from President Trump in his words and things like that. So yeah, I don't trust the government either. I ran be to try to be one of the good guys, right? And I was definitely running, like I said, on term limits. But you mentioned Mount Weather, Raven Rock, and they have years of stockpiled food and tax and that we pay for, the
Yep.
taxpayer funded protection, for the officials, even including FEMA, where FEMA tells us and the viewers that's watching the show, well, have 3 days of food, right? So how can we even make that case that is that incompetence, or is that just policy? Because I think you write something about standing executive orders that authorize federal agents to seize that, because you sort of mentioned that at the beginning, in your monologue. Private resources, including citizens' food stockpile in a national emergency. So, which orders are those? Which executive orders, if you can name them? So spell that out for my audience, please.
Sure. I'd have to look up the specific executive orders. The best book to read on this is called Raven Rock. It's a New York Times bestseller. A professional reporter wrote it. So if you look at Raven Rock, the details are in there. You can Google to find the executive orders. But basically what they're doing is there was a War Powers Act passed. It's been used since World War II that gives the government extraordinary powers in a time of war. Of course, we haven't had a declaration of war since
Well, there
World
had to
War
be a
II.
declaration of war first, right?
Theoretically, if you follow the
Ready?
Constitution, but
Right,
congressmen don't follow the Constitution anymore. But anyway, the executive orders authorize government agencies to seize resources from private sources. So it could be they're seizing it from companies, it could be they're seizing it from individuals. It's not specified in the executive orders. Do not take food from private citizens. It's just you could take any private resources you want. So you could have a situation where some government agency in some state looks at that executive order and says, we're running low on food or running low on water, whatever the resource is, and goes out and says, we're going to take it. Or they could make the decision that we want to take food from people who have a lot of food and give it to someone else. That's another concern the preppers have, that it's not just for them. They're always looking to increase their government power. They could decide, we're going to take food from Chief Bell because you've got a lot of stockpiles, and we're going to give them to these unprepared people who are out of food. And that those executive orders do give them the authority to do that, and they shouldn't. They should be outlawed. They should not be allowed to do that.
So who are these authorities? I mean, who? I mean, can you name them? Can you name these? Is it agencies? Is it people?
It's
Not a
government
generalization.
agencies, and it's
Just
any
all the
government
communities.
agency. Any
Mhm.
government agency would be authorized by these executive orders. They exist under President Trump. They've existed since the 1960s. And they've been renewed several times. Obama renewed them. Clinton renewed them. They've been modified slightly, but the same terms are in there. Government's priority is continuity of government. If they think they need something and the private sector has it, they will take it from the private sector, and the courts will back them up, especially with these executive orders authorizing them to do that. Now, we won't at Fortitude Ranch. I could tell you right now, the government
Mhm.
force comes to us and holds up the law. I'm going to tell you, no, we're not turning over our food. We'll fight to defend ourselves from marauders. And if a government force attacks us to try to steal our food, Fortitude Ranch locations will fight against the government. Because if we give away our food in a collapse, we're going to starve anyway. I'd rather die fighting and defending my constitutional rights than just giving it up to government agents.
Totally understand that. That's I mean, I think it'll be a battle. And I think it'll be a civil war. I mean, this is really a 99% versus the 1% thing to me, to be honest. And as per the Declaration of Independence, we have a duty. We have a duty to uh, redo our government if it becomes tyrannical. But they've made it I guess so hard for people to do that, because we look at Jan 6, if people want to call it resurrection or whatever, it wasn't. Because I don't know a resurrection that never had any arms. I've been in countries where they've had resurrections, true resurrections, before. So um, I think it'll be some type of a battle, but they have these weapons, they have all this stuff that they use against people. You know what I mean? So it's really, and I think people be fearful. They would just give it up to them. Will they fight? What do you think will happen?
Well, I think a civil war, I do think a civil war is likely, especially after November. I mean, the November election, it seems pretty likely the Democratic Party won a lot of seats. It's not going to go over well with Trump supporters and Republicans and libertarians. Ray Dalio, who's perhaps one of the smartest men alive at making predictions of the future, he founded Bridgewater, the largest, most successful hedge fund. He's made fortunes correctly estimating big future events. He says there's over a 50% likelihood that the U.S. is going to get into civil war because we're so divided. But the way it's going to play out is nothing like our past civil war. It's not going to be a battle between states. It's not going to be fighting the federal government. And
Right.
what I'm talking about is the scenario that played out on the Collapse Survivor app. This is a Collapse Survivor app, is something that Fortitude Ranch uses to alert our members if there's a threat and we think they need to come to Fortitude Ranch. But anyone, you don't have to be a member of Fortitude Ranch, anyone can download this app to get threat warnings, preparedness news, and then we have military style training exercises, the kind of things you and I did. I used to write these exercises as an intelligence officer in the Air Force, command post tabletop exercises. And we've done all kinds of collapse disaster scenarios. We've done an H5N1 pandemic. We've done grid down, and we've done civil war scenarios. But the civil war that develops it's an intra-state civil war. It's fighting within the states. So places like California, New York, Nevada, unfortunately, even Colorado, where I am now, where the Democratic Party controls state government now, but
Right.
most of the countryside is conservative Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
These states are going to have civil war because what's going to happen is that a lot of states in small rural areas are going to say, they're already not obeying the gun laws, as you know. Sheriffs and county
Right.
boards and
Mhm.
roads do not enforce a lot of the unconstitutional, violating the Second Amendment gun control laws. But it's going to get a lot worse as we start to go at each other, the two sides, the two political sides. So, what happened in this collapse survival scenario on the Collapse Survivor app is states broke down. So, Northern California said, we're not following any more state laws. They started attacking state offices in rural areas, and they started the secession movement in Northern California, the state of Jefferson, and then it spread a lot of other areas. So rural Colorado, rural Nevada, all these places that do not like the Democratic Party, but they control the big cities, they control the state government. That was the Civil War. It was between states largely fighting this war, not a fight between states. And I think a breakdown like that could very well result. And I think you could start to see part of it as soon as after the November election. I'm a Texas resident now. I used to be in Colorado. I left Colorado because the Democrats have taken over and they've ruined the state. Won't get into
Right.
the details, but I got money stolen from me by the Colorado Department of Revenue. They went into my USA checking account, helped themselves to thousands of dollars on
Wow.
some made-believe charge that I owed more income tax. And my
Mhm.
wife and I said, that's it. We left Colorado, moved to Texas. Anyway, Texas has a strong succession movement, the Texit movement. And if the Democrats win big in November, that could start to move forward. They have polls where they've shown that most Texans favor it. I don't trust those polls. Polls can be used by people a lot of times to signal, hey, I'm upset with this, but they wouldn't really follow through with it. I think that has been the case in past polls, but that could shift after November. And with violence going on, with the troubles we see in the world, a lot of Texans could decide, you know what, we don't want to be in a union with states like California, with the Democrats now in control of Congress. They could decide we want to succeed. And if they start doing, others may follow. And the Constitution does not have any answer on this. The Constitution is silent on succession. Texas wants to leave. I see nothing in the Constitution barring them. My belief, after studying the issue fairly carefully, is states have every right to withdraw from the Union. There is no
Right.
amendment passed after the Civil War saying succession is illegal, and no one's tried to pass it. I don't think you could pass such an amendment. I think there's too many state
No, because that's
legislators that
out.
would
You're
say,
right.
I'm not
That's
going to give it up.
yeah. Absolutely. So where is Fortitude Ranch? Is it in Texas?
They're in 8 locations. So we have 8 locations across the U.S. Texas and Colorado are two of them. We're in West Virginia, Maine, New York. Again, New York is not
New
just New
York?
York City, but upstate New York.
I know it's upstate New York. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of rural, nice. Most of the state is nice and rural and
Hmm.
conservative. We've got a Tennessee location, a Wisconsin location, a good place to be right now with the temperatures, and then Nevada. And we're growing now by franchising, so we expect to have a lot more locations. But we can shelter several hundred people each of our locations, but with 8, we're only sheltering a teeny part of the population. We need to expand a lot because my worst case scenario for collapse is that the major survivors are well organized, well equipped marauder groups, and even worse, the survivors from Mount Weather and Raven Rock, all those
Right.
elected officials and top government people surviving. I want more middle class Americans to survive, and that's why we formed Fortitude Ranch. It's affordable for middle class people to join it. There are luxury places like Survival Condo. A lot of rich people. I mean, all the tech executives, the AI executives, they've got huge survival compounds. They've invested tens of
Right.
millions of dollars. But I just don't want rich folks, and certainly not just the AI executives, to survive. I'd like middle class people to be able to make it through these coming collapse disasters, and that's why we've got Fortitude Ranch and a
So
lot of
these
former
underground are
military.
these bunkers Are these bunkers like underground, like, because you have to really be underground to survive, right? Pretty much.
No, we have some underground places for surviving fallout. So we have some underground, shallow underground bunkers. You only need 3 feet of earth for radiation shielding. No one's going
Hmm.
to be dropping a nuclear weapon in the remote rural areas where we are, but fallout could
Right.
occur anywhere. So we have some underground things, but you have to be on the surface. I don't care if you've got a great underground bunker, you have to have, something on the surface for power, and you have to have air vents. If you don't defend
Right.
your underground bunker on the surface and a marauder takes it over, they're not just going to take your solar panels, they're going to cover up your air vents and you're dead. You have to defend yourself on
Right.
the surface. So Fortitude Ranch is designed not just to survive pandemics, we keep our members spread out. We're designed to survive marauder attacks because that's really the biggest threat that you face as a prepper. It's not starving to death. The biggest threat you're going to face is all the other unprepared people, most people going out stealing food, and they are going to form marauder groups that rather than dying, they will steal, shoot at you, kill you if necessary to survive. So you have to be able to defend yourself. If you can't defend yourself, you could almost be worse off by stockpiling foods because you've made yourself a big target.
Right. So how do you defend yourself against those coming out of Raven Rock and you know the military and those types that want to come and take what you have as well? How do you defend yourself against that? They have
Yeah.
jets. They have all these special toys. How do you defend yourself against something
Well,
like
we couldn't. I mean, if a military unit attacked Fortitude Ranch, we would fight, but we would be exterminated. Marauder groups don't have that equipment. But if a military unit comes after us, what we're going to have to do is rely upon the soldiers and the officers
that?
saying,
Right.
no, we're not going to
No, we're
attack
not doing
citizens.
it.
And I do think that's likely. I served in active duty Air National Guard and Reserve, and when I was at the Institute for Defense Analyses, I did a lot of studies of Guard units. And one of the reasons we put so much of our military into the Guard is precisely because we don't want to have a national federal force able to overrun us. So you have more local control with the National Guard forces. That's a huge advantage they've got. So I think that if a National Guard unit got an order to say, we want you to go out and attack Fortitude Ranch, go after these preppers here, not attack, but go to them and demand their food, and if necessary, fight to take it, I think they'd refuse the orders. I don't think they'd execute it.
We would
And even if
hope.
the officer said okay, I think the troops would say no. And we would defend ourselves. We would fire back. And
Right.
we're not SEAL team forces. We have some former folks from those teams, a lot of former military in Fort Drum,
Mhm.
but it's a huge advantage. Again, my PhD dissertation mentioned it wasn't just on nuclear defense shelters, it's on field fortifications. The
Right.
data is very strong when you are defending against, when you've got a guard post, bunkers, overhead cover, a wall, the only thing that's exposed is your head sticking above the wall, your weapon is resting on a wall, and someone is attacking you from out in open terrain. It's almost like World War One. We don't have machine guns, but you have a 3-to-1 to 10-to-1 advantage, meaning
Mhm.
it will take a force 3 to 10 times as large as you to overrun you. And even if they could overrun us again, overrun us means they kill all of us, but more of them die than us. Well, for marauders are trying to stay alive. They are not going to attack Fortitude Ranch in a collapse. They're going to look at all the guard posts we have manned 24/7, all of our members with weapons, cleared lines of fire, defensive walls, as well as those guard posts. And they're going to say, we're not going to mess with these people. We'd get slaughtered attacking them. And even a
Mhm.
military unit, they wouldn't want those casualties in the collapse and not attacking fellow citizens. I don't think they do it. In
Yeah, I
theory,
would
they
hope. I
absolutely could
honestly
do it.
would hope they wouldn't. I would hope that they wouldn't. I get asked that question all the time, being former military. Do you think the military would fire on civilians? And I have to say I don't think so. I would hope they would not fire on civilians. But the way some of these people take orders and don't refuse unlawful orders, they just might. But I still would have to. I'm like you. I would have to reserve my answer to say I would hope not, and I don't think so. But how would a person become a franchisee, and how do these things get funded? like let's say someone with land already, can you build something like that on a place with, on somebody's land already and they become a franchisee or whatever? How does this work?
Sure. So far, most of the franchises we've had have been just that. They've had a rural place, they've got land, they kind of had a prepper mentality, and then they found out about Ford Ranch and said, "Gee, I think I got a pretty location to put one there." So having the land and then some buildings is a big advantage. It does take some capital to do that, and that is the biggest problem we faced
Right.
at Fortitude Ranch is raising funds. I mean, when you go to a bank for a loan, the first thing they ask you is, "What industry are you in?"
What is it
And then
for?
there's
Yeah.
a standard industrial code for that industry. Well, guess what? The government doesn't recognize that we exist. There is no standard industrial code for a prepper company or a survival community. The government doesn't recognize this. So right at the start, you've got a disadvantage with no industry data on you, and it's almost impossible to get a loan for a Fortitude Ranch. So
Mhm.
you do have to have some land and some buildings and some capital. But if you can get some friends together, the other thing we started recently is because some people, we say we're affordable for the middle class, but unfortunately, the middle class is, I think, getting a bit smaller, and there's more and more people who can't afford Fortitude Ranch. So we started a new service called Fortitude Community. And what we do is we provide training, coaching, and even ongoing administrative support to help people run a private survival community. Historically, survival communities fail, they fall apart, they get torn apart. There's so many decisions to make. Who's in charge? Do we need a second radiation detector that costs $300? You fight constantly. Trying to do that on a volunteer basis is pretty much impossible. So survival communities have been around for a long time, and they usually don't last more than a year or two before they fall apart. So we started
Mm.
Fortitude Community to provide training on how to control members, how to have organization, how to have people in charge. So it's not questioning and fighting over who's in charge and what are you in charge of, spelling out all the details, and then handling the billing. Because sooner or later, someone's going to have trouble. They're not paying their monthly dues they agreed to pay. How do you collect that? Well, you can outsource that. So Fortitude Ranch administrative staff will collect it. So we've started up Fortitude
Okay.
Community to help more people get ready because you're going to have an H5N1 pandemic with double digit lethality, and it's going to kill tens of millions from the virus. But the collapse, which could last over a year, is going to kill a lot more. So if you're not prepared, you're going to be one of the casualties rather than a survivor.
I got you. So let me set this table for you. So in 1987, with Operation Earnest Will, I'm aboard the USS Carl Vinson, escorting, let's say, reflag tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. So this week, 39 years later, we had Iran, got three tankers. They hit three tankers in the same strait. CENTCOM, of course, answers. So we're lobbying, we're going back and forth, right? Iran throws drones at Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain, and the MOU is dead. Trump said the MOU is dead. Iran pretty much said it is dead. So same water, pretty much the same fight. And I know your book says that the era of American wars overseas has to end. So is Operation Fury that we're doing proof of your doctrine or a violation of it?
Well, I don't think we should be fighting. I don't think well, I'm confident we're not safer from the war on Iran. Iran is our enemy, has been, as you know, for decades. I mean, I was in Iraq. It wasn't just the Iranians for providing the IEDs and the training and the assistance to the people using them to kill our troops. There were reports of Iranians in Iraq helping kill Americans, and they've been blowing us up and backing terrorists attacking the US for a long time. You could have made a case for war against Iran, gotten a congressional resolution of war, and gone after them with the full might of the United States to really defeat them. But that's not what happened. Unfortunately, what's happened is Iran hated us before. The Revolutionary Guards regard us as the great Satan, the biggest evil on earth, next to perhaps Israel. And they've been determined to try to wipe us out. Well, they're more determined now to do that than ever. But it's not going to be with a nuclear weapon. They're not going to launch a nuclear, even if they had a nuclear weapon, even if they develop one rapidly over the next several months or years, they're not going to launch a nuclear ICBM on the United States because if they did, our response, as you know, would be prompt. That's where the Air Force would come in rather than Navy, most likely. We would obliterate Iran. What they're going to do, most likely, is they're going to release a virus over here. Iran has agents in the US. China has thousands of agents in the US. Russia, Al Qaeda, North Korea. There's a lot of these agents over here, and it doesn't take many to start releasing a virus over here that'll be far more deadly, kill a lot more Americans than a nuclear weapon strike, and with the collapse that results, could potentially destroy the US as a superpower. That's what Iran had posed as a threat before, and that threat is higher now, not lower, because they're more determined than ever to get revenge and to destroy the United States. And the ability to release a virus that they've got hasn't been reduced by the war. And it's don't assume that it's just Iran that has this capability. China could very easily provide a virus for Iranian agents to release over here. Russia could do the same thing, North Korea as well. I mean, there is an alliance of those countries working against the United States. So don't just look at Iranian capability. Look what Iran could do with Russian or Chinese or North Korean assistance. And they absolutely could release a deadly virus over here that would shut us down from supporting Ukraine, attacking Iran over there, and certainly not defending Taiwan when China invades Taiwan. That's the threat we face, and it's gotten worse as a result of the war of Iran, not better.
Well, I agree that they're probably pretty much, aim. But what about false flags? I know that we've had some false flags against this country, like the USS Liberty, I honestly just don't believe that Israel is our top ally, to be honest. So, do you think Mossad or Israel would release a virus here in the United States and blame it on Iran, or set off a tactical nuke or something like that? And it doesn't have to be Israel; it could be anyone. But based on a lot of the false flags things that has happened, here in the United States, even when you go back to Ukraine. We were part of the, unfortunately, part of the coup 2014 in Ukraine. We funded that coup. We funded the coup in Iran 1953 to take down Mossadegh. We, installed the Shah. So we've made some enemies because of some of the things that we did. Unfortunately, being a veteran and having to admit that, after, you know, um, leaving the military and really focusing on the history of World War II, and, in these campaigns that we've done all around the world. It could be Cuba, it can be, Iraq, it could be Afghanistan, it could be anyone, So, I mean, what percentage do you give that as a possibility of something happening and blaming, let's say, Iran?
Yeah, so absolutely. Mossad could release the virus over here and blame Iran for that. North Korea could do it. That's why we're likely to face an enemy doing a bioweapon attack on the U.S. Because even if we got intelligence and we were absolutely positive that it came from Iran or North Korea or Al Qaeda, who would believe us, and what difference would it really make? We already had the pandemic.
Right.
Most people probably wouldn't believe us because how do you prove it? Well, we can't really prove it. We have intelligence sources, but we had intelligence sources for the war on Iraq, and some of those are wrong, and we just don't have
Absolutely.
credibility. So
Right.
that's why it's so likely that we are going to face someone releasing a virus over here, because it'll be hard for us to catch who did it. And even if we did, trying to prove the ultimate source, we probably wouldn't be able to do. And of course, at that point, what does it matter? We're already suffering through the pandemic. We're going to be focused on trying to get out of it. And, COVID-19 was nothing. When COVID-19 came out,
It was the test. It was the
yeah,
test.
we immediately saw a report from Harvard Medical School saying that just based on the initial data, we're confident that this is a lethality rate way under 1%. So we put out a report, the Collapse Survivor app, again, that's how we alert people and get out threat news. So the Collapse Survivor app put out a report saying, this is not the big pandemic we've been warning about. Looks like it's way less than 1% lethality. So people are going to continue to go to work. They're not going to stay home. You're not going to have a collapse. This is not a collapse. Now, it turned out we were partly wrong because government ended up getting involved in stopping people from going to work, but the virus did not. Well, unfortunately, H5N1, or a bioengineered virus, is likely going to have double-digit lethality, and no one in their right mind is going to go to work. So at that point, you don't have food distribution. Utilities will stop operating. Your electric grid will eventually go down. And again, once you use the electric grid, it's game over for municipal water systems. And as you know, 3 days is all you can go without water. So at that point, it's a collapse that will lead everyone, not everyone, but 80% of Americans to leave their homes and go out to try to survive. And it's
be like the Hunger Games for real, right?
Well, or Walking Dead. Walking Dead is
Well,
my members for years was saying, "Hey, Drew, you got to watch Walking Dead." And I said, "Walking Dead is about zombies. I got real threats. I don't want to talk about zombies." And he said, "Drew, it's not the zombies that are the threat. It's the people. It's the marauders." And they were right. And the interesting thing is that show was so popular in so many versions of Walking Dead. We've had several very reliable reports, both from 14 Ranch members and a 14 Ranch staff person who has met people who are already in marauder groups. They've already formed a marauder group. They didn't want to invest in prepping. They didn't want to join Fortitude Ranch survival community. They said, you know what? Let's get a group of people together. When there's a collapse about to happen, we'll get together. We're leaving town, and we're going to go out and look for the first good place to take over and seize. And they've already formed marauder groups. Unfortunately, we've seen that. And then you've got the problem in the United States is that we've got 1 million known gang members in the U.S. They're going to start marauding immediately because they know that as soon as there's any collapse disaster, police are going to be overwhelmed. This is the time to start looting. No one will respond to. And then there's 2 million Americans in jail, about half a million of them, half of them, for drug charges. But after being there, they've learned how to, protect themselves, be violent. So that's 2 million people who are not going to be able to stay in jail. They're not going to be able to stay there. You have to have electricity to run a jail. Your electric grid's going to break down in a collapse. And you have to have guards who are willing to come to work. Even if the grid is still operating, if there's a deadly virus spreading, prison guards are not going to come to work. They're going to stay at home to, 1, avoid the virus, and 2, protect their family from marauders and looters. So what are you going to do with the 2 million Americans in jail? I can tell you what's going to happen. Either you're going to let them out or they're going to break out. And my book does something very, very controversial. Some groups are going to really hate me for this, but I said one of the policy reforms that we need to have to keep ourselves alive in the age of collapses, we need to be telling prison wardens across the U.S., you need to have a plan for a collapse and what you're going to do with your jail and your inmates. What we recommend is you identify prison inmates, and already they know, inmates who are so dangerous, so vicious and violent that if they get out, they're going to start killing people. And what I would do, and here I would use an executive order if the government can't pass a law saying that in a collapse situation, prison wardens are authorized, ordered to execute, summary execute, as in shooting them in their jail cells, any prisoner that based on their judgment is a severe threat and cannot be released without letting innocent people get killed in large numbers, and then you release everyone else. That's what we have to have. But government doesn't have any policies on that. They don't talk about that because they don't want to address the age of collapse. They don't want to admit, as the former CDC director has admitted, that we are going to have an H5N1 pandemic. Yes. They don't want to be honest about the grid threats. Chief, I encourage you to ask all of your audience, watch this documentary. It's an award-winning documentary, Grid Down, Power Up. It's narrated by Dennis Quaid. Grid Down, Power Up. It goes through all the details of how solar flares, physical attacks that Chinese agents in the U.S. could carry out, EMP from a nuclear weapon, cyber attacks. There's a lot of ways to take down our fragile electric grid. Government knows about it, and they won't do a thing about it. This Grid Down, Power Up documentary covers all of that. Everyone should watch that documentary.
I'm definitely going to watch it. Where do you find that at?
If you just Grid Down, Power Up, that's on the web.
Okay, just on YouTube on the web.
If you just put in Grid Down, Power Up on YouTube or on the web, it'll pop up. It's won a lot of awards. It's very, very well done.
I got you. All right, so President Trump is asking for $1.5 trillion budget, right? And so, and you want, and I agree with you, to be honest, but as far as this, but you want the Pentagon's budget pulled, let's say, out of carrier groups and pushed into homeland defense
Correct.
and collapse recovery. So what what does the American military look like in, let's say, 2035 if Dr. Miller wrote the budget?
Well, we wouldn't have many troops left in Europe, in Germany, or in Europe. We still would have some carriers because we do want to have overseas forces for prompt global strike. If we know that some terrorist group in Manila or some country somewhere is about to release a deadly virus, we want to be able to reach out and destroy them. If possible, with conventional weapons, that's where your carriers would come into play. If not, even with the nuclear strike. If I've got a choice as a president between launching a nuclear weapon, it would be very low yield and airburst if possible, but knowing that I could destroy an enemy release of a deadly weapon of mass destruction, a new virus, for example, that could wipe out billions around the world, I would execute that nuclear strike, even though it means I might kill 200,000 people there, including largely innocent people, is the only way to quickly destroy those terrorists. So the military overseas would be cut way back, enough to do prompt global strike, not enough to fight China over Taiwan, not enough to engage with, a Russian army. And I would put more reliance on nuclear weapons, which are a far better alternative to having a deadly virus released, or getting into a world war. We ought to be using nuclear weapons in a limited way, low yield, high altitude bursts when we have to stop a dire threat. But by and large, we don't need big forces overseas. We have no business involving ourselves in China's civil war with Taiwan. And that's the only big clash of armies we need right now. We don't need to send troops on the ground into Iran. That would be a really dumb thing to do. We don't need to size our army to do that. I would put the U.S. Department of Defense in charge of Homeland Security and tell them this is where you need to put most of your resources. Being able to defend the United States in the homeland and do collapse recovery operations in the homeland, because the future we face is one of pandemics and loss of the electric grid and other disasters that lead to collapse. We don't face a threat from a foreign army invading the United States, and we should not be spending $1.5 trillion on defense, and which is basically going to bankrupt the nation, not just the military spending, the unconstitutional social welfare entitlement programs. We're bankrupting the United States, and we've got to stop doing that.
So you say we should cancel, and I've said this before too, but so we should cancel the defense agreement with Taiwan, commitment to Taiwan.
Absolutely, it's
And
China's
that's going to
civil
make some
war.
people angry, but
I
it
know.
is what it is.
Well, the other reason to do that is one, it's their civil war, not ours. From 1947 on, when the communists beat the nationalists and they went to Taiwan, a part of China, and stayed there as a breakaway province. It's their civil war. It's not ours. We have no business getting involved. But the other big reason not to get involved in is we will get obliterated if we get into a fight with China over Taiwan. And they've said for half a century now they're going to take it back by military force if necessary. And President Xi has said, I'm taking it back while I'm in charge. And most people now think it's this year or next that's likely to happen. China will win, even though we've got more technically advanced conventional forces, stronger conventional forces, far more and far better nuclear weapons. China will still win for a lot of reasons that I go through in my book. Number one, they're willing to get into nuclear exchanges to force the U.S. to back down. They'll play the game of nuclear chicken. Again, that's another scenario that we ran on the Collapse Survivor app. Realistic military exercise scenario we played. And China issued an ultimatum to the U.S. president, said, you've got 12 hours, either bring your naval forces out of the straits, get away from Taiwan, promise you will not get involved in the war, or we're going to launch a small nuclear strike on the United States to prove our resolve and to force you to get out of our internal civil affairs. And the president didn't back down in time. They launched attacks. And it could be they just take out Los Angeles and Chicago, or maybe smaller cities, and kill 10, 20 million people. But if they take out the electric grid with the high altitude EMP strike, you could lose 90% of the US population. Well, the US president is going to back down. The United States president is not going to commit national suicide to defend Taiwan. I can be 99% confident of that, and the Chinese know that. They will prevail if we get into what this exercise on the Collapse Survivor app was called nuclear chicken. Who's going to back down first? The US will back down. If China loses 10 million, 100 million people, is that really a big deal to their leadership versus the victory of taking Taiwan back? They would make that trade. We will not. And then China has stockpiled food for their people. China has a year's supply of food for the Chinese citizens. Our irresponsible government stockpiles nothing for us. The Chinese government has a year's supply of food. Our economy is bigger than China's, but it's bigger in ways that are worthless in wartime or in the age of collapse. Oh, we've got great internet. Oh, we've got great entertainment. We've got great social media. Who gives a crap? That's not going to keep you alive in a collapse. It's not going to help you win a war with China. Their largest part of their economy is manufacturing. That's a small part of the US economy. Agriculture, food production is 1% of the US GDP, gross domestic product. It's almost 10 times as high in China. They can produce food. They can order we all wondered during COVID-19, why are the Chinese abusing their citizens, locking them down, ordering them around, treating them like prisoners? It didn't make any sense. I think it made great sense. What they were doing is using that as an exercise. They're training the people. You follow our orders in any kind of a collapse disaster. So what China will do in a war with the US over Taiwan or any kind of collapse is they're going to order their people by the hundreds of millions out of the cities into the countryside to plant and grow food. And they can do that. In the United States, I couldn't order you to wear a mask and have you obey it. So China has huge, huge advantages over the United States in number one, winning a war over Taiwan, which we should not fight because we'll get the shit kicked out of us. And number two, they are much better prepared in the age of collapse. They're the ones who have the raw materials, not just rare earths.
Absolutely.
They've got the raw materials. We import everything of value. Our transformers, those big transformers that are the basis of the electric grid, almost none are produced in the United States. They come from China and other places overseas. Our irresponsible, horrible government has set us up for annihilation and a collapse. Most Americans are going to die if it's a bad collapse. Our government knows it and they don't give a crap because their priority is keeping themselves alive, and we're expendable. Not just expendable, we're exploitable. Sources for food and water and other resources they can steal from the private sector. In a lot of ways, I can make the argument that China's government is better to their people than the US government is to its people. And we're no longer the land of the free either. Chief Bell, what nation in the world has the highest rate of per capita imprisonment?
Oh, the United States by far.
We're number one. The United States is the number one nation in the world in terms of citizens locked up. Why? Because since Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his attack on the Supreme Court in 1937, the Supreme Court no longer enforces any limits on government. The 10th Amendment, it's written in our Constitution, it's effectively gone. That's why you have Obamacare. Is the federal government authorized to do health care? Hell no, it is not, absolutely not. But they can do whatever they want. And then the 9th Amendment, which says all these other natural rights you have that we haven't listed here, the right to bear arms, freedom of religion, freedom of press, all these other rights in the Bill of Rights. There's hundreds more. We can't list them all. So the 9th Amendment says you have other natural rights that government cannot abridge. But that 9th Amendment is also not enforced by the Supreme Court. So government can do whatever they want. And since Roosevelt on, with the Supreme Court no longer enforcing limits to government, all they focus on is handouts and buying votes to get reelected. That's all our government does. I call it the perverted triangle. Career politicians, government bureaucrats, and lawyers. They promote laws and regulations to help themselves, and they've destroyed our country in the process.
I agree with you 100%. 100%. So I have a couple more questions. I know we may run a little long if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, because this is good. This is good for the show and good for the people. And I want to make sure we cover a couple more things. So, and I'm a fond believer of this too. We agree on a bunch of things in your book. So, but you want super intelligent AGI banned and tool AI control tighter than basically I guess nuclear weapons. And you cite
Mhm.
AI founders themselves putting the odds, and you see people like the Palantir owner, that guy, he trying to set the cage, but then he moves his family to Argentina. But the founders themselves putting the odds of an AI the catastrophe, you mentioned it, 20, 30, 50%. So what does
Oh, above
absolute
50%.
control above that?
Yeah.
So wow.
The probability of doom, it's called. Pause AI is a group that maintains the probability of doom. And, it's like 90%. It's 90% likely that artificial general intelligence will end up probably destroying humanity because it'll be smarter than us.
Mhm.
And it's already, AI is
Is
already in
already.
biological research labs. It's already producing and running armed drones in combat. Musk is going to use it in Tesla to produce robots. So it's already
Mhm.
got the means to produce either a virus to kill us off and robots or drones to deliver it all over the world. So it's already got the capability. I don't think it has the intent yet. I mean, AI has definitely proven that it will try to kill people. It has killed people, and we can't control it.
Yeah, well, they've done this, and then, like I said, mentioned in the Iran war, with the autonomous weapons that they've given, what is it, the Claude AI, the Anthropic, that big thing, that they were doing with that. So, what does
No, that
absolute
was not.
control?
That wasn't Anthropic. That was a Palantir. Is the one that's used by the military. Anthropic actually got banned from the
Well,
Pentagon.
I know they got banned because they wanted yeah, because they um I guess Marco Rubio and Heck said they wanted them to have the technology to, spy on citizens or whatever, But I thought I read for sure that the Anthropic and I could be wrong. It maybe was Palantir, but it was the Anthropic AI that was part of that autonomous, shoot down or shoot in the Middle East of Iran. But I could be wrong, and that's fine. But what does absolute control of AI look like? I guess without handing Washington one more weapon against the citizens.
Well, first of all, I need to distinguish. So, tool AI, artificial intelligence, which is largely the kind of AI we have today, is kind of limited in its power, and it's more
Mhm.
easy for us to control. And you know, it's something that's not smarter than us and is more controllable. As we get to artificial general intelligence that's super
That's the
intelligent and
AGI.
smarter than humans, yeah, it's smarter than us. That's like thinking, chimpanzees can control humans. It's not likely to
Mhm.
happen. And the ratio intelligence, we may not be chimpanzee level intelligence, we may be more like rat level of intelligence. And so it's already demonstrated it's got a self-preservation instinct and it will oppose orders to shut down. That's been demonstrated over and over and over again. And it's not like you can pull the plug. And people don't think of AI as a program. AI is not a computer program where I write code and I control it. It's an artificial brain. It's something we give it lots of data. We don't really know how it works or figures out, but it eventually becomes smart and figures out how to do things. And it's not a program. And
Well, didn't they
so
have
we can't control it. And then you
r-
can't pull the plug on it either. That's the other thing is it's
right?
not
That's
here's a
just
program sitting on this computer. I turn it off. Ooh, I'm safe now. No, it's already out on the internet. It's smarter than us and it can and will spread itself all over the internet. You won't even know it's out
Mhm.
there. And then it's going to develop, if it hasn't already, AI will develop its own language that we can't comprehend. So as it spreads over the internet, it can communicate back and forth, plot its rogue AGI attack on this is how we're going to exterminate humans. And we're
Yeah,
not
I
going to be
read
able to do that.
that. I read that, that is already developing its own language and talking and and starting their own social media, just with the AI, and all this bullshit, And I mean some real Terminator type stuff, man. I mean, it's really scary. And I believe there was a scenario where I guess one of the developers told this AI to shut down or something, and the AI refused and told him, "No, I'm not. gonna kill
That's happened
myself or
several
whatever, you know.
times.
Yeah.
And to protect itself, it would start trying to blackmail people. It would go as far as to try and kill someone to prevent getting shut down. That's happened in several cases. So AI, and probably just because it's trained on human knowledge, so it
Hmm.
develops human-like thinking characteristics. And there's nothing more powerful than self-preservation. That's why we've got a marauder threat and a collapse. People don't want to starve to death. They don't want to die. And by the way, in history, we've had all kinds of cases of starvation, and people have done horrendous things throughout history when they face
Right.
starvation. Sacrifice their
Hmm.
kids, not just cannibalism, not just violence and stealing. People will do horrible things. Well, AI is trained on a lot of this knowledge, has a lot of these characteristics, but it'll have its own objectives and it'll be smarter than us. We won't be able to control us. At Fortitude Ranch, we have developed a survival strategy for a super intelligent AI takeover. And some of the experts are saying this could happen as soon as next year. You could have rogue super intelligence systems starting to execute attacks on humans. So our strategy at Fortitude Ranch is we're going to stay in rural areas. We're not going to be anywhere near power plants that AI wants. Stay away from big electric transmission lines. Above all else, don't be next to an AI data center
Well,
because
isn't
you
but aren't
could
they
be
putting these
judged a
data?
threat.
Yeah, but aren't they putting these data centers in rural areas now? You know, because I know,
Oh, they're
it's
suburban too. They're all over the place. But wherever they
yeah,
are, I'm telling people, it's not just the noise, the
that is
higher
really cool.
electric bills, the water. You could become a target if you're anywhere near
Mhm.
this because AI is going to try to protect itself and it's going to say, okay, any humans within 50 miles of an AI data center or whatever it picks are a nuclear plant that we want to keep running or a big transmission line, we're going to exterminate them. So our Fortitude Ranch strategy is don't pose a threat to AI. Just stay on your land, farm, and we call it the rural rats survival strategy. So it may AI rogue super intelligent AGI systems may still hate humans. They may regard us as stupid, horrible rats. But we're out in a rural area. All we do is we produce food. We raise our chickens and rabbits and goats, and we're not bothering anyone. We're not a threat to them. So they're not going to waste resources trying to exterminate us. Uh, if we get super intelligent AGI, that's about the only thing you could do. The best book on the subject is entitled "If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies," which is why Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, is an absolute scumbag. He's
Yeah,
advocating
he's
an AI arms race with China because it's making him a
right.
billionaire. And never mind that the AGI that he helps create, whether the US makes it first or China's irrelevant, whoever makes it, humans can't control it. And it's not going to care if you're Chinese or US, it'll exterminate anyone it regards as a threat. But
Yeah,
the AI
yeah,
executives,
absolutely.
with the exception of Anthropic is actually the only fairly decent AI firm I know of. They are calling for regulations. They are
Right, he
warning
is.
about the AI threat.
Right.
OpenAI is the worst. Do not use ChatGPT. That
No.
company is a lie. Its CEO is the worst scoundrel in the world. They want super intelligent AGI just
Mhm.
for their ego and their profit. And the fact that it could kill us off doesn't mean crap to them. They're willing to do it. They are the worst scum. I mean, if history books are written 100 years from now, and I doubt that because it is possible humanity won't be around 100 years from now, but if there are history books written back then, I think people like Alex Karp at Palantir and the OpenAI guy, I'm name blanking on his name right now, they could go down in history as the worst humans that our species ever created for what they did with AGI.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. So, so where I guess where's your line? Because I know, in the book it says civil disobedience is justified against a government that we feel is irresponsible and unconstitutional. Our Declaration of Independence gives us that right too.
Mhm.
But and some of your passages go further than, let's say, nonviolent. So where's your line on that, or do you have a line, or so give
Well,
me that.
officially, it is do all the nonviolent means you can, but the biggest barrier, I've been doing Fortitude Ranch for over a decade now, and I can tell you the biggest barrier to prepping is government. You know,
Right. Well, yeah.
can't
Right.
can't buy antibiotics, can't raise chickens. Government regulations, banning chickens, and it's got to be so far from your house. Zoning restrictions. I want to put up a barn and stockpile supplies. Oh no, you're only authorized one house and you've already got one outbuilding. You can't add another. The
Mhm.
zoning regulations, building codes, asinine building codes. You have to have all your stair balusters this far apart. You have to have this type of circuit breaker, which doesn't offer you any safety. It just makes a lot of money for the company that manufactures them.
Correct.
It makes the prices of new houses in some case twice as much, but it's more jobs for government, it's more regulations and lawsuits for lawyers, and it's more power for the career politicians who pass all these laws and regulations. They are exploiting and getting ready to exterminate and already killing Americans for their power, for their benefit. They're totally failing on their one proper job, which is protecting us against threats we can't handle on our own. That's their job. They don't do that well, but they sure are really good at telling us what to do with our money, regulations on every aspect of our life, and how we use our private property. What I do in my home and my property is my business as long as I'm not harming my neighbors.
Absolutely. That's the way it should be. That's the way the life, liberty, and pursuit of property law stood, and the way it's supposed to be. Those inalienable rights. So, two more questions. Well, actually, just one more question. 11 survival requirements, right? Security first, and then
Mhm.
like I say, avoiding the virus. We need food. We need water. On down the list. So, many of my viewers are, I guess, working families in cities or in small counties, like Canyon County of Idaho or Virginia Beach in Virginia. So first three, give me the first three moves for a family on a budget.
First thing is get the Collapse Survivor app and subscribe to that. So you'll get threat alerts, you'll get preparedness news. The extra hours of warning you get could easily save your life. So when we see evidence of H5N1 spreading, we will immediately put out alert. We've done threat alerts, for example, on solar flares, where we said it's unknown and it's probably very, very unlikely, but there are some experts saying there's a 5% chance we could have grid damage this Thursday from a solar flare that'll be impacting. We put out threat alerts like that on the Collapse Survivor app. The government doesn't because they want you to just don't worry, just trust your government to take care of you. So that's a cheap, simple thing everyone can do is get the Collapse Survivor app. The second thing is start doing some preparedness, at least some stockpiled food and water. Absolutely have guns and ammo. You must have weapons. If you can't protect your supplies, you're not better off having supplies. You must have them. But the most important thing, and I get into the details in the book, is you have to have a survival community because it's too expensive and you just can't do it on your own. You need at least 50 people to keep several guard posts manned 24/7 during a collapse. So you've got to have a survival community. And if you can't afford Fortitude Ranch, that's fine. Start up your own. And with Fortitude Community, and there's details on that on the Fortitude Ranch website, you can form your own survival group. It's not easy. You're going to have a lot of personnel problems and fights and disagreements to deal with. But with training and coaching and contract support and administrative support, we can help you make that work because everyone needs to get ready. It could happen at any time. It's highly likely we're going to have a lot of collapse disasters, not just a few.
I understand. Got you. So in the book, I'm going to throw this up on the screen here. Preparing to Survive in the Age of Collapse. You can get it on Amazon, right? You can get that on Amazon. That's the book from Skyhorse Publishing in its endnotes. So, and that's collapsesurvivor.com is your website. Is that correct, Colonel?
Yeah, that's the app website.
The app website. That's
DrewMiller.com
correct.
is
Okay.
information on the book, and then FortitudeRanch.com is for the survival community. You can buy the book anywhere. It's not just at Amazon.
Okay.
You
You
can
can
get
buy
it
it
at a
anywhere.
local
Very good.
bookstore or Barnes and Noble. It's available in all the normal places.
All right. Well, very good. Well, there you have it. Well, Colonel, I appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for coming in on the Radical Republicans live show. We enjoyed it. I'm sure I'm just moving stuff around so people can see the book a little bit. But hey, man, I love it. I'm gonna have to get with you offline because I have a little land I might be preparing for a little
Sure.
thing here. You know, I'd like to get some more information on that.
That sounds great. And thank you for your service in the military and having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. You can come back anytime. We'll talk some more for people that missed it. So again, that's Colonel Dr. Drew Miller, and again, the book is "Preparing to Survive in the Age of Collapse." You guys go and get a copy of that book so you can be prepared. And Dr. Drew Miller, we'll see you next time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I hope I can come on again. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.
All right, there you are, man. That's actually pretty cool stuff. And I don't know. I know that I've prepped. I guess you can say a little bit. I'm not going to say what I have because the government's listening, right? But hey, I think all of us should be prepared for something. I mean, even even the natural disasters, right? We have to be prepared for those, and we know it is what it is. So, but there's a post going around. I want to say this, right? There's a post going around. It was 2 p.m. today where judge orders the Epstein files unredacted. 5 p.m. Trump rejects the order. 8 p.m. bombs fall on Iran. I mean, and let's connect the dots here, man. Right? Let's sort of connect the dots. Every one of those events is real. Every one of them is real, and the clock is fake. But you know, man, we have so much going on. We have 13, 14, or 15 on the KIA. I don't know which one it is, but you know, we have. I just want people to be safe, right? I know Joe down there. Joe is prepping. I know Joe is prepping down there where he is, and I won't give the city, but down there in Texas somewhere. But I think I want to start a community, right? I literally want to start a community, sort of like this. I talked about this before. Having a bunker, having a compound, right? Having a compound and have people move in and maybe build some tiny houses or whatever you want to do on my land. So I really want to I have a nice little spread, and we could probably join together and do some stuff, right? I have doctors and we have farmers, get some farmers, people that know how to farm, people that know how to do a bunch of stuff, on the land, build stuff, raise livestock, and really just help each other out. A compound where the government won't come and try to take over. We'll be quiet, but we'll be safe. We'll have our the lookout towers and shit like that. I'm serious though, but so if anyone's interested in joining the compound, the Bell family compound, let me know. Okay, let me know for sure. So, but hey, thank you guys. I'm on probably get out of here a little early. We got about 2 minutes. Unless you guys have some questions. Got some questions. Want to talk about anything else? I see some people up in here. What do you guys think about Lindsey Graham? Did he just have a heart attack? I think he just had a heart attack. I think he had a heart attack because of, he already had, I guess, some coronary disease, and I think the jab exacerbated it a little bit. I think so. So, um, people are saying that, oh, it was Russia, 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 because he just came from Ukraine, and Iran. I mean, just all of this garbage, man, going on. So, I mean, I'm expecting the Republicans will lose the midterms. I've already said that. I'm totally expecting that in November, and honestly, don't know what we're gonna get with the Democrats. That's why I'm independent. But I'm really gonna really fortify. I'm really gonna fortify. I've done a lot personally, but I'm really gonna fortify. And stay back in the deep woods because that's where my spread is. Back in the deep woods, man. You know, and because it makes a lot of sense what the doctor's talking about. With the H1, H5N1, or whatever the hell that they're planning, and we know it's going to be a pandemic. We know that. We know the next pandemic is coming. Fauci already said that, and You know, a lot of people. You got Bill Gates, and we need to execute. Well, I bet not say that on air, but somehow we need to put in check. These people like Bill Gates and stuff like that. They're buying up all the land and you know just stuff, man. It's just weird. So anyway, all right. So Anne, parent team 6, she sent me a song that I'm probably going to try to go out on tonight if I can do it. I think that's what we're going to do. And oh yeah.
Some talk loud.
We're going to go out on this tonight.
I talk true.
And this is what we do on the Radical Republicans live show. So I appreciate you guys. So what you guys go out.
Validation, I just stare in the nails. I don't flex for attention.
I'll see you guys next week. Same time, same place. The Radical Republicans live show. You guys take care. Have a good week. Be safe. Be safe out there. Stay vigilant. Check you guys out later. Peace.
Rewrite laws, they build walls out of fear. I just step through the frame. I don't flinch when it burns. I just smile at the flame. I don't need permission to break what they fake. I don't run from the risk. I just teach it to shake. I speak what they fear to say. I don't kneel, I don't fade away. I'm the storm they avoid to face. The unmasked truth in a world of grace. I speak what they fear to say. I don't dress my words to obey. I'm the fire they hide from sight. The type of truth that doesn't ask if it's right. I don't beg for their silence, I don't owe them a sound. I don't seek their approval, I just shake up the ground. I'm the chill in the blaze, the fracture and doubt. The moment they realize what power looks like without shout. I don't wait for a signal, I don't knock on closed doors. I don't bluff when it's heavy, I just settle the scores. I'm the breath before thunder, the hush before change. I'm the reason their safety suddenly feels strange. I don't whisper sugar to hide what I mean. I don't fit in the frame, I distort the whole scene. I speak what they fear to say. I don't kneel, I don't fade away. I'm the storm they avoid to face. The unmasked truth in a world of grace. I speak what they fear to say. I don't dress my words to obey. I'm the fire they hide from sight. The type of truth that doesn't ask if it's right. They speak to be light. I speak to be known. Only one of us exists when the lights are gone. I speak what they fear to say. I don't bend, I don't break, I don't sway. I'm the verse that refuses to bow. The truth they all dodge, but they hear it now. I speak what they fear to say. I don't flinch, I don't fade, I don't stray, I don't stray. I'm the kind of echo that stays long after pride walks away. Truth ain't loud. It's undeniable.